Good evening, everyone. I am Chris, joined once again with Dale to discuss more Disney movies. We're in the middle. No, we're not in the middle. We're not in the middle at all. We're not anywhere close to the middle yet. But we're still continuing on through our Disney retrospective in celebration of 100 Years of Wonder, 100 years since the founding of Disney Animation Studios. And we're up to number 4. We're a month into this thing. We're talking about Dumbo, 1941 film. Based on a storyline written by Helen Aberson and Harold Pearl. I didn't actually know this until earlier. It was based on like an illustrated roller book thing, which is a very interesting topic for Disney to cover. Apparently the story was brought to him and he was just like, yep, I see the potential in that, let's get it made, which seems to be a running theme with Walt at this point. But Dumbo, this is well, we'll get into it in a second because I don't know many of your thoughts on Dumbo. This was definitely one that was on heavy rotation for me when I was younger. In fact, I managed to find the old videos out, and now I haven't been doing this week to week. I can do this for Bambi, but when we get to like Saludos Amigos and that like whole chunk of random Disney films, I don't have the videos for those. But I found my VHS of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now this isn't like the original VHS. I think this was like a special edition one they bought out. Like those cases especially were like the special edition ones. Yeah, special edition. Over 30 minutes of bonus features, fully restored and digitally remastered, new audio and all kinds of stuff on there. I did find. Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, doesn't that whole, 30 minutes of new footage, all that kind of stuff, doesn't that bring you back to the whole, not geeky place, but, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all that kind of stuff? We've got 2 minutes of extra footage and everyone goes out and goes crazy for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a comment from Carl. I do have the chat box up. I'm not quite sure why that isn't doing what the chat box is meant to be doing. I don't know if there's a bit of a latency period with it, but he says, "Evening, gents. Nice t-shirt, Chris. Thank you very much. Yes, representing one of my favourite bands, Kiss. Was a great gig. You also went to that gig. Not the same gig that I went to. I went to see them in Birmingham. You went to see them in Manchester. But it was such a good gig, wasn't it?
Manchester was their last gig in the UK, I think, bar Scotland, but that doesn't count. So England, it was the last English gig. I feel like, yeah, it was really cool. I was like, all right.
I admire the patriotism right there. It's like England, Scotland, we're two separate. Okay.
You just heard what I said about Ireland earlier, but we won't go into that.
we both know what those Irish are like. Am I right? Got Pinocchio with distressed edge to the paper there, because I used to take these things out when I was younger for some reason. And
do you know the one thing that I really, really recognise and remember on that? It's the typography, the red.
Yeah.
That for some reason is very iconic to me, which they don't use that anymore, do they?
Oh my god, look at these. Do you remember these things? Look at that. Like the noises that they make.
I know, you could like chew on one. Not that I did that, but you could. Yeah.
There's like a scratch on it but you can't see it. One thing that I love, and I think this was on a lot of them, was was this like silver sticker, and if I get it in the right light, you can just make out Pinocchio.
And that's what made it legit, wasn't it?
Love it, yeah. It was like, and I remember the ad. Oh my god, dude! Look at the adverts in the box and the inside art. I got the Fox and the Hound, and the Lion King, Ben Dobson Broomsticks. That's going to be a fun one when we get to that. Basil the Great Mouse Detective. I'm really looking forward to that one. You got Sword in the Stone. Oh, this is great. We will get onto Dumbo in a second, guys, I promise, but I just wanted to go through these while we're still early on into the retrospective. So, I mentioned this last week. This was the one that the like the second, third hand, fourth hand video store that I went to had to order in for me. Was this one, because I never saw this in store anywhere to buy Fantasia. It was really hard to track down.
I had that,
but it's a really cool case. I really like this one, and on the back you've got my boy Chernabog, and yeah, it's a really nice cassette. This one, no inside artwork, but as the video cassette says, Walt Disney's masterpiece, Fantasia, right there.
Which is weird because this Dumbo is Walt Disney's favourite. Allegedly.
Yeah. And which brings us up to today's one. Dumbo. This was... when I found this out earlier, just before the stream, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia, because I remember exactly like my old house, and like we had this little alcove at the side of the wall where all my Disney videos were, and I just stare at that like the whole time. It's just such a sense memory to me. And this logo as well. Like, do you remember these? Like that Disney logo.
Yeah,
Oh, this is great. This is
yeah.
great. I'm loving it. But yeah,
This
Dumbo.
makes me sad in a lot of ways.
Yeah, dude, we're getting so old. It's so depressing. Um, See, this says 86 minutes. Now, this is one thing I was going to bring up because I watched Dumbo again a couple of weeks ago when I was very ill. I mentioned this. I just had like a week in bed because I was bedbound and I was dying. I thought I was ready to write my last will and testament. I thought it was it. I thought I was done. And I
You
was
left me your TV, didn't you?
yeah. It's not a great one. You've probably got a better one than I have. But this is one of the shortest Disney films, actually. Now, it says Wikipedia has it at 64 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
This says that it's 61, but I didn't notice anything that had been removed out of the film, so I'm not quite sure why this says it's 61.
Well, in all fairness, there was, the pink elephants on parade. That was changed. I know that. I don't know the DVD version if it was any different, but I know that was changed. So whether or not that, I don't know, because I know obviously you know what the world's like now. I'm not going to go into that, but obviously the way the world was before with the whole obviously drunk Dumbo drinking champagne. Obviously you had Pinocchio smoking cigars. That's not how they portray Disney movies these days. So I wonder whether it's something to do with that, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I couldn't. There wasn't like any noticeable edits in there. I didn't notice anything that had been removed. And then the VHS has it down at 86 minutes. Now I know the reason why this says that it's 86 minutes. I mean, it's probably counting like the trailers and stuff that you get at the beginning of the cassette, I'm guessing. But I was actually expecting this on the DVD. One of the most nostalgic things for me about this film is that after Dumbo finishes, after the feature finishes, there's a couple of little Disney animated shorts. Now, I didn't know the origin of these shorts. I didn't even know what they were called. I just remember that there was a Noah's Ark one, and then there was one with like these three kittens, just like tomfoolery with these three kittens. And I just thought that was part of Dumbo. I thought Dumbo was like packaged as the main feature Dumbo, and then you got a couple of these little things afterwards. I found out afterwards that they were from the early to mid 30s, I think they were, and they were part of the Silly Symphonies. So there was Old Father Noah, which is like a musical number. It's actually quite creative, some of the stuff they do with like the animals helping build the ark, and it's just the story of Noah's Ark basically. But there was one that, the Three Kittens one, I remember now in hindsight. I mean, as a kid, like, you don't think anything of it. But there was, you know how Tom and Jerry cartoons was all from Tom and Jerry's perspective? If there was a human in there, you'd never see the human. It was always like from the knee down, and you'd hear their voice.
Like Cow and Chicken.
Yes, exactly. It was basically, the Three Kittens sketch was like that. But I know that the human woman in it, was like quote unquote stereotypical like black mammy kind of thing, like very much of the time. And I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting to watch this now with modern eyes to see what this animated short's like, and if there are any kind of like weird areas with it now. And it wasn't on the DVD. It's just on the video. I managed to find the Noah's Ark one on YouTube, but I'm having a hard time tracking down the Three Kittens one with audio. Someone's uploaded it to YouTube in its entirety with no audio. It's like a mute video, which is why. And I don't think it's like been hit with like copyright or anything like that, but yeah. Anyway, that's the preamble for Dumbo. This was like one of my favourite ones as a kid. Definitely, I used to watch it a lot of times. How about you? What's sort of like your earliest memories of this movie?
To be fair, I see it as a background movie. It's one of those that it was just kind of on. Pink Elephants on Parade, that was one of those things that you just see. And a lot of things in Dumbo, I think I said this to you earlier, a lot of things were kind of foreshadowed in the sense of the clowns at the end with the whole, jump, Van Halen reference. But, with the whole where the clowns are, it's obviously telling Dumbo to, jump from the roof, but, when it's on fire. They remind me of Toy Story 3, with the clown. I can't remember his name. But, like those kind of things.
Was his name Giggles the clown?
Chuckles? Chuckles. I swear it's Chuckles.
Yeah, something like that.
Chuckles the clown. Just things like that. I think there was a lot of foreshadowing. It's the playful movie that you have on, which is great in, like when you're a child. Whereas when you get things like obviously Bambi, which we'll come on to next, is you're more serious. So I think the contrast is huge in between the two movies. So I think my biggest memory of it is just having a cartoon movie. I mean, I think I explained to you before. One of my biggest comparisons was a Dragon Ball Z movie, Dead Zone, which they have Gohan eats an apple. Very, very different from drinking champagne, but he eats an apple, which makes him kind of pretty much high, drunk. And I remember watching that for the first time. I'd watched Dumbo obviously many, many years previous, and I thought, this just reminds me of Dumbo. Do you know what I mean? It's like the weird stuff in the background, that kind of someone high, where obviously Gohan's a kid, but Dumbo's an elephant, something you wouldn't expect, which I thought was really, really cool. So I think a lot of stuff in Dumbo happens where, not that you see it today in movies, but a lot of it is it's your playful kids movie that there's a lot of foreshadowing where you'd watch a movie and you go, okay, I kind of see that. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And as a kid, like I wasn't thinking like, oh my god, like Dumbo's getting drunk. Like I probably didn't even know what drunk was, what like the meaning of that was when I was first watching this film. But yeah, you especially considering we're watching all of these in order, there is definitely a noticeable tonal change from some of the previous Disney films. I mean, there are some horror elements to this, I suppose. I guess pink elephants could probably terrify the hell out of you. Probably terrifies me more now as an adult than it did as a kid. Actually, that was one of my favourite scenes as a kid. I distinctly remember always rewinding that pink elephant scene. That was like one of my favourite songs in the film. But yeah, like even Disney says like this is more cartoony. I'll try and find the direct quote later on because it's definitely on the Wikipedia article. But this movie was made to recoup the losses made by Pinocchio and Fantasia, and obviously in the subsequent years, both of those movies have thankfully made their money back in the long run, and massive critical acclaim on both of those films, hailed as probably up there as Disney's best films. But this was a push for simplicity and just to keep costs down. It was an economy, basically, this film. That's why it's a really short runtime. I think when this film was in the can and it was done and it was handed off to the theatres and everything, or whoever was handling that side of things, they wanted an extra 10 minutes. They wanted it to be pushed to like 70 odd minutes because they thought that 64 was too short, and Disney was like, no, if I can't stretch this story out any longer, the film is exactly as it needs to be any longer and it will ruin the film from what it is. So I respect him for doing that. And that's a running theme as well, because it was Fantasia last week, wasn't it, where one of the theatres, I think it was RKO Radio Pictures, wanted to cut it down from the 2+ hour runtime, and Disney was like, look, do what you got to do, but like I am not touching that edit. Like that
the
film
thing
is how I want it.
You've got to kind of think as well when I make movies, how long before someone gets bored? Like, I'm not talking about this movie because obviously it's quite a short movie, but how long do you reckon you'd sit and watch a movie before you get bored?
Mm-hmm. At that age as well, like the age that it's intended for. Yeah, I had a terrible attention span as a kid. Like an animated film, you want that to clock in at about an hour to an hour and a half tops.
80 minutes.
80 minutes is the sweet spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is, when you're that age as well, and you're watching, I think this is the thing a lot of things these days miss is, because remember Hercules, obviously,
of course
you had that, but then, well, yeah, but you remember you had obviously, like the same with Little Mermaid, you had like the series, you'd have 30-minute segments here and there and everywhere, which is great. It's the same with Dumbo. They had an idea of what a sequel would be back in like 2006, I think it was. Like they had an idea of what a sequel would be. I think a lot of movies now, it's kind of, this is your thing. You're not really gonna make a cartoon 30-minute thing of it. It's literally, this is what you get, this is what it is. Whereas I think back then you had more of an opportunity to, this is what you have, there's so many things you can do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I imagine I don't know the source material. It's really weird. It's like, it's based on a storyline for a character from like a toy / book. It's a really weird thing. I was just reading here, the book was first brought to the attention of Walt Disney in late 1939. I always think it's really interesting with this, and it's going to be really interesting next week when we talk about Bambi, to see how early in production these things were. Because I always just think of these as sequential, like, right, we get Snow White done, right, now let's start thinking about Pinocchio, right, we've done that, right, now let's start thinking about Fantasia. And that's really not the case. Like, as I say, like the book was first brought to his attention in 1939, so that's before Pinocchio. That's before Fantasia. That's right after Snow
Just
White.
be- just before we go any further, wouldn't you love to live in that period? Not just because of what it was, but because I think now we take for granted a lot of stuff we do. So where it comes to Frozen or Tangled or anything like that, we kind of do because it's like, well, okay, that's cheaper. We can do this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Whereas back then it was we do it because it's like, let's push the boundaries, let's do this. We have to make a point. Whereas now they don't have to make that point, they just do. And it's kind of, oh, next one in the gutter.
Yeah,
Kind of like Strange
yeah, yeah.
World, which Strange World was really, really badly received. I know it was really greatly received on Disney Plus, but it was badly received, and they were like, "Oh, it's fine, we'll make another one. Oh, it's fine, we'll make another one." Whereas back then, it was like, we need to put our all into this. That's the difference. It's the same with music. It's the same with like back in like the 1970s when Led Zeppelin was around. Like they had to put their all into it. Whereas now it's like, I'll make a rock song. Screw it, it's fine. We'll make another one.
Mm.
Do you get what I mean? It's like I think it's too easy now.
Well, I think there was just more at stake, wasn't there? I mean, especially this early in the studio's lifespan. Snow White was a massive success, yeah, and then unfortunately a world war broke out, and revenue for his next two features, which were massively ambitious and really pushed the envelope in terms of technologies and what could be done with animation, didn't make money, and this one was just purely made to try and get some cash in. If this thing failed, I mean, there's multiple times throughout Walt Disney Animation Studios, especially right around the time of like Black Cauldron, where the company almost went under. They almost went bust, and that was probably at the back of his mind right here. It's like, well, if we have any more losses, I mean, there was a strike during this as well, an animation strike. Anything could have happened. Like the company could have gone down. So I think maybe that was an incentive as well. It was still like a fairly fledgling company overall, really. Like, well, I know that he did like the Silly Symphonies, and you had like Steamboat Willie and thing like that. So say like 10 years maybe at this point. But yeah, I mean, from Snow White, that was what was that 37? I've already forgotten when that came out. 19? Yeah, it was 1937.
Yeah.
We're looking at like 4 years on, and he's having to cut back on this film on the cheap because they're not making money. So yeah, just like those old pioneers, just like all the tricks of the trade. That's why I love older films. I have such like a reverence for these older films. We'll see this in a couple of weeks' time as well, especially after Bambi, where I think it was like World War II was still going on, and you'll get stuff like Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros, which are like 40-ish minutes a piece.
Fun and Fancy Free. Woo.
And yeah, that's one of your favourites. Yeah, no, that would be good to go back to. That would be good to go back to. I've watched that a couple of times. Certainly, that bulk of films, that's the one that I enjoy the most, definitely. But there's some in there that I haven't seen yet, so that's going to be interesting to watch.
I think the big thing about a lot of these stuff as well is, so I'd relate it to like PlayStation games. So remember when you had like PlayStation 1, you'd have X amount of games, but you'd have loads and loads. You'd remember your PlayStation 1 collection, you'd have hundreds, whatever it be. Okay, PlayStation 2 collection, you'd have quite a lot still. PlayStation 3, it got smaller. PlayStation 4, it got smaller. PlayStation 5, to be fair, PlayStation 5 being quite new, I mean, I've probably got about 6 games. PlayStation 4, I had about 20. PlayStation 3, I had about, let's say 60. PlayStation 2, sorry, before that, I had probably about 80, 90.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is, with all those kind of things, you have more risk is taken, whereas now you've got either it's good or it's not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas like back then, with Dumbo and with obviously Pink Elephants on Parade, you had big segments, whereas they went for it and they went, let's do this. And you have so many things that you could do, whereas now it's either it's good or it's not. There's no there's no gray area, which I think really ruins that kind of industry. And I think, you're not getting the kind of, what's the word? But the kind of background that you want.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get your Dumbos, because if Dumbo came out today, it would be your straight to DVD, cool, or straight to Disney Plus even. You're straight to Disney Plus, cool, there's a movie about an elephant, amazing, fantastic. Whereas back then it was, this is a cool thing to do. And I think that's what makes it special.
Well, yeah, I mean, there wasn't many animation studios out there at the time, was there? Like, this is what I mean, like Disney was a pioneer in so many ways. Yeah, there were other animated features. I think I don't know if it was like Gulliver's Travels or something. There was another one that was mentioned around the time where Pinocchio came out. I think Pinocchio was technically like the third animated feature in history, because there was another one that came out of some kind. So, I mean, there were other animation studios out there, but Disney was like leading the charge. I mean, these were getting Oscar nominations, and you know, this one won an Oscar as well
Academy
for best
Award,
music score, and Baby Mine was also nominated for best original song. So yeah, that we're getting noticed. And I think back then as well, I mean, I don't know if there was the wealth of films that there are today and the wealth of choice, where you've got like at least 2 or 3 new movies coming out every single week. I'm guessing back then going to the cinema, especially around this time when there's a world war on, was an event. It meant something more. A lot of things now are quite disposable. You look at Disney Plus, especially, it's like, right, get it out on Disney Plus. It's there for a week, right? Okay, it's in the Disney Vault. What's the next thing? And I don't know if that would have been the case with something like this. I think things probably had a bit more staying power back then.
It's a bit more special.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah, you look forward to it. It's like another Disney property, unfortunately now, but like Star Wars. Back in the good old days, when it wasn't owned by Disney.
Please never say that again.
Back in the good old days, before the dark times, when Disney didn't have their talons in it, a new Star Wars movie felt special. You wouldn't get one like.
Do you want to hear something ironic? Sorry to just jump in.
Sure.
You know how you said talons in it, right? Yeah. They own Marvel, but they don't own DC, which has the Court of Owls, which owls have talons. I just wanted to point that out. That just came into my head. See,
you could have gone with a Star Wars reference and said like Darth Talon, who's like actually a character, but sure, yeah, we can go with Court of Owls. But yeah, like a new Star Wars movie would take years to come out. When it did, it was fucking massive. It was like a cultural phenomenon. Everyone was talking about it. And it would sit for a few years. You'd have time to rewatch it and to take it in. And then now it's like, oh, we've got an Ahsoka series. Oh, guess what, guys? Next year you've got The Acolyte coming out. And then also we've got this movie coming out and this movie coming out, allegedly, which still probably won't happen. But it just feels so conveyor belt now. And that's not just with that. That's just like with movies in general and kind of Disney movies as well. Not to take anything away from it, because you know Wish looks pretty cool. The new animated one that's coming out, I think it looks okay. Certainly better than Strange World. We'll see. But I do think after everything that's come out with that new South Park episode, the Pandaverse, and people have kind of held a mirror up to Disney now, and not just what Disney are doing, but all other studios where they get taken over by agenda. I think hopefully we might start to see a bit of a shake-up now. I hope, unless they're going to double down and just become a parody of themselves. But as I said, one of the reasons for doing this retrospective is to look back at brighter times of the Disney studio, and thankfully we're still in it at the moment. I was just doing a bit of reading about the behind the scenes of this thing. Oh, go on, sorry.
I was going to say, that's a good point. Where do you think the line is? Just off of where we are now, where do you think the line is roughly?
It's
good to see where the perspective is in comparison to when we get there.
I still think we're in the middle of it. But I think now that South Park's massive, Trey Parker and Matt Stone have like won Tonys and things before. A lot of people are talking about it. It's everywhere online right now, poking fun at this kind of thing and stuff that like myself and you and a few other people have noticed in movies for a long time now. I always say from like the end of 2015, but definitely 2016 is where we started to see this kind of agenda pushing with not just movies and video games. The new Spider-Man game's done it. Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2 that's come out recently as like race swapped a character from the first game, and really pushed her. Like she's, oh, you're so much of a better agent than I am, says her boss, and it's like, can we just stop doing it? But I think now that people are starting to become aware of it, and it's the South Park episode, it's funny, it's a parody of it. I think more people are coming around to it now and wanting something else, and they're thinking with their wallets. That a lot of Disney products and Disney features, because they've been pushing this stuff, have been losing money. Indiana Jones 5 lost considerable amount of money. they're losing millions of subscribers from Disney Plus. The new Marvel film comes out later this week, I think it is, isn't it? Or next week? I'm pretty sure it's this week.
Do you know how long it's been since I followed Marvel?
Well, exactly, and it's not just you. Like, was it the Hollywood Reporter, or which, I forgot what the article was, posted like a massive piece on the downfall of Marvel and how they're basically fucked. And there's talks that Disney with their Marvel products are going to try and bring back Robert Downey Jr. and the original and Chris Evans and like the original Avengers, and try and bring them back for a movie, and that's just so desperate because they're just trying to harken back to when they were successful.
It's kind of like when soap operas do it, don't they? Because soap operas do it a lot, from what I know. Like, they bring back characters that you're like, but weren't they dead? Do you know what I mean? It's like when they do it, where it's like, obviously because they've got low ratings, they do this, so that's why they do it. It's the same sort of stuff, really.
But even the Disney live action remakes were making bank at one point, and I think Little Mermaid probably did make a profit, only just, but it probably did make a profit, but it's definitely a lot less, and there was definitely a lot more vocal people about it, talking against it. But Snow White has been absolute torn to pieces, the live action version that's coming out on the internet, to the point where they're basically having to reshoot the whole thing with CGI dwarves, and it's been pushed back to 2025. Rachel Zegler has just been completely lambasted, quite rightly so, online. So I think people are coming around to it. So that's the live action side of things. People are getting apathetic towards Marvel now, and all of their projects are kind of failing or aren't really gaining much interest from people. The Marvels is looking to be a massive flop, and I can't wait to see that. That's going to be hilarious this week, just to see how much it actually does make in its opening weekend. Star Wars, completely apathetic fan base for the most part. There's still some vocal fans of Ahsoka.
It's depressing, really, because I love Star Wars and I love superheroes, but anything Marvel, I'm just like, and anything Star Wars, again, like I got given a load of free comics the other day. Star Wars, I have not bothered touching them, because anything to do with that, it's like, here's a Star Wars comic. Look, you've got a girl on the front. That's fine. It's like, so remember when Batman 89 came out? They had, what was the dude's name? Lando Calrissian that played...
Billy D. Williams.
There you go, exactly, right? That's fine. He plays Two-Face. Absolutely fine, because they're not trying to prove a point. You can have a dude play this dude. Absolutely fine. But when you're trying to prove a point, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you have it for a whole, do you know what? This guy can play this guy. Yeah, he's not a black guy, but you know what? It's fine. That's when it works. But when you're doing it to prove a point, it does not work. You know what I mean? It's like if they made Kill Bill as a remake, right? And for some weird reason, I don't know why, but Oren Ishii was a black girl. It would be like, well, no, because you're trying to prove a point. Like, why that?
Exactly.
It wouldn't work. So it's that kind of stuff that doesn't work, to be fair. And I think the great thing about Dumbo in this era of Disney is they're not trying to prove anything. They're just doing what they love. And it's when you get, Pink Elephants and Parade or the last scene or anything like that, they're just doing things that make sense. Mm-hmm. And I feel like today you get so much stuff that's like, oh, we got to do this. Oh, yeah, but we got to throw in this. Oh, we got to throw in this character. Like, remember that 90s show that came out? So obviously they had the 70s show, but then they got that 90s show, which I've never watched. But we got to put a gay character. We got to put a black character. Why? If it makes sense, cool.
Yeah.
Why would you do it unless it makes sense?
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Well, I mean, and we did see aspects of that in the Tim Burton live action version of Dumbo. I don't even really remember all the ins and outs of that. I remember it being a terrible film, but there's just loads of shit that's just added in, of course, because Dumbo's like an hour long, and they've got to pad it out to a 2-hour runtime, and it's just needless and it's pointless. Carl's just left a really great comment, which I just wanted to bring up. Even if Disney did make a change, it would take 3 to 4 years before we see anything due to how long it takes to make films. Absolutely. Probably even longer at the moment because, the writer's strike and the actor's strike that's happened. A lot of films that were meant to be coming out later this year have been pushed back to next year. And even some films that were meant to be coming out next year have been pushed back to 2025. We've seen that with Snow White. Thank God. Keep that delayed. Just keep delaying that film. Deadpool 3.
I'll die before it comes out.
Yeah. Deadpool 3, which was meant to be coming out next summer, has only filmed half of the film at the moment, and they still can't film the rest, so that probably will get pushed back. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2 was meant to be coming out next year. That's been pushed back to 2025. So next year for films is looking pretty bleak. I think it's going to be pretty barren next year. So
video games, that's the way to go.
Yeah. And Disney just needs gutting from the top down, from the bottom up, just everything. It needs completely gutting and hiring people based on their talents and their passion. And not just we're going to hire that person because they're a woman or because they're a person of color or because they're this race or that race or because they have this, they identify as these certain letters, not doing that and just hiring people based on their talents and what they're bringing to the company. That's what they need to do. They need the same visionaries, like the same animators, the same people behind it, producers, everything. They need that like Walt Disney figure or George Lucas figure, whoever it happens to be, that initial spark. Now, I'm not giving George Lucas all the credit for something like Star Wars. Of course, it's many people, special effects artists, model makers, conceptual designers, everything that actually gets the film made. But you need that one person at the helm saying, yes, I like the look of this, let's go in that direction. You need that visionary behind it. And at the moment, we've got a bunch of agenda pushers. But as I say, with this like South Park thing, I'm hoping that now backs off. And they just need to go back to making quality entertainment. That's all they need to do. That's all. Disney, shit, that's all you needed to do. Just make quality entertainment like you used to. Don't talk down to us. Don't try and push all of this shit. Just let us have a good time at the movies.
I really think that Frozen did that, and not just because... We'll come on to that later. But anyway, I feel like Frozen did that because remember they had the what was it, like the really openly gay character that was in the whole, like when he went you all that kind of stuff, whatever it was. Like, I mean, I'm not saying he was gay, but what I'm saying is that whole attitude that in 2023 could you have that attitude? Probably not, because everyone would go, oh, actually that's homophobic. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of that where it's just that casual kind of stuff that you could do, where I think they don't let loose enough these days.
Yeah, you can't have fun or do anything now in movies. But as I say, I think the foundations are crumbling on that a little bit, which should be interesting to see. But yeah, just bringing it back to Dumbo real quick. So apparently, this is interesting to read here, that the story artists, so there was Dick Humer and Joe Grant, and they were assigned to develop the plot. And they wrote a 102-page script, and they wrote it in a book in chapters, which is a very strange way to do a script. But apparently the film didn't really change all that much from the original draft, which is interesting. The things that were added into the story or changed from the original story, apparently in the original story, instead of the Timothy Mouse character, it was a Robin. Called, I want to say
Red
it was
Robin.
Just called Red, wasn't it?
Yeah, Red Robin.
So they changed that to Timothy Mouse because of the whole thing about elephants being scared of mice, which I think was a good change. I think that works if you're going to take liberties like that. And then the crow was added, and also Dumbo's mom's name was changed from Mother Ella to Mrs. Jumbo, which, sure, why not? But yeah, we'll get onto the crows later because I know that's a talking point for a lot of people. I'm going to give my 2 cents on it as well. But there was some deleted scenes in this film, which are on the DVD, which I wasn't even aware of. I'm glad they were deleted because I think it paints the Timothy Mouse character in an incredibly unsympathetic light. The first deleted scene I think they're kind of around the same placement in the film. It's right when he goes and scares the rest of the female elephants, when he walks into the middle and they all like go terrified. He comes back to Dumbo and he tells him like the origin story of why elephants are terrified of mice. And we get this flashback, and it flashes back to prehistoric times, where there were dinosaur-sized mice walking around. And the elephants were the small ones. The elephants were like really tiny, like the size of mice. And these rats and mice were like ginormous, and it showed them hunting the elephants and scaring the elephants and being really fucking horrible. And Timothy was just going on about this long history about what happened. And then he said, oh, over time the mice shrank down and the elephants grew. It's very strange. But some of the concept art's really cool. In the deleted scene on the DVD, this guy went into like the old vault, into the old boxes, and he had like white gloves on, and he took out this box from like 1941. Space Jam! Space Jam! And yeah, he was like sifting through like all the old artwork. I was like, that must be amazing to look at some of that stuff, like the early concepts and everything.
And this is the reason I just went like that to Space Jam, is because the first inkling I got of, obviously there's the whole elephants afraid of mice, or that kind of stuff, like, ee! Or that kind of, you know, but I got it from, I was playing a video game, Bugs Bunny and Taz Time Busters, and there was an elephant sat on a dude, and he had to chase a mouse, and when the mouse got to the elephant, he jumped up, and that was the first inkling I had of, okay, cool. And then it was, yeah, elephants are scared of mice. That was the first like reaction I had to that whole kind of thing, which was kind of cool. But it's that cliche. It's the thing I think about this is it hones one of those cliches. Obviously, he's a mouse, but it's that whole like, but you can still be friends, which I think is a nice thing to have for kids. But it's also, well, I say it's one of those things where today they go, oh well, you can be friends even though you're different, and it's like you don't have to think that much into it. You know, it can just be the whole mice, elephants, boom, boom, boom. Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And
yeah,
I agree with that. And in a lot of those old cartoons, I mean, I don't think I ever played that game that you mentioned, the Looney Tunes one. But
it's great. You should.
I've just always known that. Oh yeah, like elephants are scared of mice. They're not actually in real life. I actually don't know where that stemmed from. It's really interesting. But yeah, it was just like in every.
It's great.
Cartoon
You should play it. I played it about like twice in the past 5 years, and it came out in like 1999. You should play it a lot.
What was the game again?
Bugs Bunny and Taz Time Busters. It's one of the greatest games ever made, alongside Toy Story 2 and.
That was great. Played that.
Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Alongside the two of them is great.
I did play Bugs Bunny Lost in Time. That was a fun
great,
game.
But it's kind of like the spiritual successor. You play as Taz as well. It's great. You need to play it.
I'll try and seek that out, definitely. There's one other deleted scene as well, also a Timothy Mouse scene, and it's right where I think it's after the show, isn't it? It's when Dumbo's in the tent and he's crying. I think he's just done the show with the clowns and he's like really, upset. There's a deleted scene there which actually another musical number, and it's Timothy singing about how his granddad always used to tell him. It's called like Tra-la-la or something like that. But he basically says you've got to put on a smile, like the show must go on kind of thing. Even when you're feeling blue, when you're feeling sad and you're upset and everything's against you, you got to put on a smile and you just got to get on with it. That's basically what the song is. I just think like that's a real dick move from Timothy. Like he's not being very sympathetic there. I think as the movie stands, he's trying to cheer Dumbo up, and Dumbo's just really upset. And then he says, "Well, hey, you can go and visit your mum. Like I've arranged a meeting for you to go and see her." And then obviously you get the baby mine sequence, which was a really lovely scene. And it's like, oh no, Timothy's watching out for him, So I think that musical. It's not even a good song, really. Even stacked up against all the other songs in the film, it would definitely be the worst one. I just think that it just makes the character look a bit of a dick. So you've kind of got those two deleted scenes there. But other than that, I think everything else pretty much remained unchanged from everything. There was an animator strike as we... Oh, go on, sorry.
I was going to say Baby Mine was... nominated for an Academy Award, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. We could talk about the music first, actually. No, that's probably a good segue onto that. So Frank Churchill and Oliver Wallace scored the movie, and Ned Washington wrote the lyrics. And yeah, it won the Academy Award for Best Score, and Baby Mine got a nomination for Best Original Song.
The weird thing is, I don't see the movie as a musical. Like, I see it as more of a kid's movie.
Same, yeah.
It's fun. It's very there's a big contrast between that and Bambi, because Bambi was more serious, kind of. Obviously, Bambi's mum will get shot, all that kind of stuff. Spoiler alert, but you know what I mean. But you get what I mean. Like, it's a very serious, whereas this is your playful movie.
Yeah.
I feel like they should have made a live action Bambi with real deers, but here we are. But I feel like this is it's your playful movie in contrast to the next one. To me, it's not. I mean, it's a musical in a way, but to me, it's not a musical because it's your family-friendly kind of. It's something where, I don't know whether you agree, but to me, I had it on in the background as a kid. where when you're a child, you're just kind of like crawling around the floor, playing with like different shapes and all that kind of stuff, and you have like Dumbo in the background, and he's flying, he's got his ears and all that kind of stuff, and you just think, I mean, to me, I mean, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong here, but do you ever see the whole, if I was to say to you, right, you're going to have one wing, just one wing, not two wings, but one, and you're going to fly, would you fly in circles?
Oh, I guess you would, yeah, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Exactly. But for some reason, I see Dumbo flying with one ear. Insert. I don't know why, but it's.
Although Sephiroth had one wing, could he fly?
Yeah, but well, yeah, he could fly and he killed. But that's another topic for another day. I will go into that in future Disney movies because Kingdom Hearts Disney movies that will eventually become a thing, and it is.
Well, we can talk about Kingdom Hearts because I mean, Dumbo is a summon in Kingdom Hearts.
He is, and he shoots water, and it's great, and it's amazing. And then Mushu shoots fire, so we can do this for every movie.
And you get Dumbo from Monstro up on one of the high platforms. You have to have high jump and fly, I think, don't you, from Neverland, and then you have to come back, and then you can get into. I know which platform it is. I can see it in my mind. It's like you have to go up to the right.
You can see the treasure,
enough, and then you fly across. Yeah, no, I got it.
Yeah, exactly. But the point I'm making is it's a very not a background movie, but it's one of those things where it's so childlike that I think you put it on. It kind of like Pinocchio. I mean, obviously, I said my views before Pinocchio. It's kind of that to me, like that one of those. I know you love it and it's great. I think it's one of those background movies of it's a child's movie where I think it just has a lot of stuff where I think it's fun rather than a general. Whereas Snow White to me is more of a whole. This is a cool movie, whereas the others are very. These are good background movies to watch. It's kind of like anything like Tots TV. We all remember Tots TV, don't we?
I remember Tots TV. Yeah,
exactly. You remember it in the background, but you don't remember specific episodes.
Yeah. For me, maybe kind of tied to that point as well. You're sort of saying that it doesn't demand like your full attention as a narrative, as a story that's playing out. The storytelling in Dumbo's, I won't say frustrating. But it kind of falls apart in terms of a narrative for me towards the final act. It plays out like pretty much a straight narrative right up until the point where he flies around the circus, but then you have like the bit where he's drunk, and then we go into like a seemingly random disconnected feature of Pink Elephants on Parade, and then right after that we just fade into, and he's in a tree, and we learn that he's flew away from the circus at some point and he's in a tree now, and we've got these new characters, these crows, and we have another song and dance number, and then pretty much the film's over. The ending feels a little bit sort of slapped together. I know it wasn't, because I know that was in like the original treatment, and it works, and I still love the ending. Like the crow sequence, like they have the best song in the film as far as I'm concerned, the most memorable one. We'll talk about the characters in just a second. I love the crows. I think they're really entertaining. They've got great energy. I love their back and forth. And
I think
banter.
The thing about the crows as well is they have there's so many characters based on them now. In the 60s, in the 70s, I think there's a lot. Like, did you ever see Transylvania 6000 or whatever it's called, the Looney Tunes cartoon?
I didn't see that.
I think there's characters which I feel like they're based on them. I could be wrong. To be fair, they're more based on the Snow White vultures. They're more based on them. But there's a lot of characters based on that kind of. I mean, it sounds kind of racist, but that kind of that black people were kind of back then. Obviously, they were. That whole secondary person. I feel like that whole segment of. You can hard black guy plays this, cool. It's that secondary character. I think there was a lot of that, which, I mean, it worked really well. It worked really well, and it went really well. And I think those characters are really, really great for that.
Yeah, I think the controversy really around the crows stems from modern audiences, believing them to be African American stereotypes. The lead crow, who was originally
the Siamese cats are worse.
Oh yeah. I used to love that song. I still love that song. I still listen to it. the main crow was called Jim Crow. They changed his name in 1950, though. I thought that was more of a modern change, changing his name to Dandy Crow, but apparently that change came about in the 1950s. Jim Crow obviously isn't cool, because it's the Jim Crow laws were racial segregation laws in America, which isn't cool. But very much these characters sort of like play into the like minstrel show type persona, I would say, of that kind of stereotype. That being said, though, I think that the rest of the crows were played by African American people, and from like choirs and everything like that, so that was fine. But Cliff Edwards, the one who did the voice of Dandy Crow, is great. Like, he brings so much energy to it, and it's an interesting topic of like, race swapping, or like, can you have a distinctly black character played by a white guy, or vice versa, and whatnot. And one of the things I always show, and that seems to get a free pass from everyone in terms of race swapping, that probably one of the best examples of race swapping in any film, is Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder. Fucking brilliant. Like, I think that even got him an Oscar nomination. And the dude's in blackface throughout the whole movie. And this was like, Tropic Thunder in like when was it, 2007 or whenever it came out. I never had a problem with the crows back then, and to be honest, watching it again, I don't have a problem with the crows now. I think they're really fun characters, as I said, and they're actually sympathetic towards Dumbo. It's not like they're horrible characters or anything like that, or they never really come across as mean-spirited.
I think anyone that's got a problem with the crows or anything is a complete wet wipe. Like,
yeah.
Not to get into the whole racial debate, because we could be here for hours if we do, but I think anyone that does is a complete wet wipe, because it's the whole caricature. It's like Gollywogs. It's the caricature with that's what it was then. It's like, you've seen Django. Everyone's seen Django. It's that kind of, what, we're not going to acknowledge that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's that kind of vibe.
Yeah, and I was just reading here, the Ward Kimball, who was the chief animator of the Crows, brought in African-American dancers, Freddie and Eugene Jackson, and got them to dance in the studio for live-action references for the animation. You have, like, their back and forth was apparently inspired by band records, where you'd hear, like, Louis Armstrong sort of, like, talking to his band and having back and forth how you do... what's his name? James Brown used to do that as well on his records. Like, fellas, I'm ready to get into it, man. Move in, doing it, yeah. And you hear them like talking in the background.
I personally think black people just have so much on us that we don't have.
I know.
Like, we just
really
steal
do.
a load of shit from them, but
But they never come across as mean-spirited. Like in that scene that was cut from Fantasia. Yeah, you watch that now and you kind of go, ooh, maybe. Like, again, as I said last week, I don't think it should be removed from the film, because I think it's historical. I think it's important to keep things as they were, for better or worse. You can look at it and move on and just say, okay, well, it was a different time period. It wasn't great, but they don't do that now. But there were talks that Disney Plus were going to do an edit of this film and remove the whole crow sequence. Well, what do you do for your final act of your film? You're literally going to go from pink elephants to credits, pretty much. Thankfully, they haven't, though, but I do think they have some kind of they have a disclaimer on everything now. But interestingly enough, because I think Disney Plus has like an age... I think Disney Plus has like an age lock on its thing. This film has an age lock, and it limits you to... You can only watch this if you're 7 years or older, because of the... quote, what is it? The crows being depictions to racist minstrel shows. So, unfortunately for people under 7, you can't watch Dumbo. And believe me, I was watching this film well under the age of 7, and I fucking loved it, and it's great, and it's a great one to show kids. So, fuck Disney.
Like, the dudes that play the crows, they're not here anymore. They don't give a shit.
Exactly.
And like you say, you were under the age of 7. When I first watched Dumbo, I was, 3 years old? Probably. Yeah. It was in the background. It's the same with, like, Space Jam. When I watched it, I was like, 4, 5, whatever age I was. I don't know. But the point is, you don't know what's going on. You should go, cool, colours, awesome. Pink elephants on parade. This is awesome. This is amazing. You don't give a shit. That's the thing. I think the world is too serious, but we will come on to that more when we go through the movies more. But I think it's just, when you got to think about it, if you were to bring those actors back, would they care? That's what you got to think.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is no.
I was just reading about the animator strike here, and there's a separate article which I've only just seen now because otherwise I would have read that in preparation. So I might just try and paraphrase some of that in a second, and then we can cycle back to some of the characters and favorite moments and the music as well. We've got to pick our favorite song. So yeah, there was an animation strike which halted production for around 4 months. Not everyone went on strike though. It says here. Let me just find it here. Yeah, production on the film was interrupted on May 29th, 1941, when much of the animation staff went on strike. But Ward Kimball, who was one of the animators, chose not to strike, but his close friend Walt Kelly left the studio shortly afterwards for reasons unrelated to the strike. You mentioned as well that there's a moment in the film which some could argue is a direct reflection of the whole striking thing. It is the clowns, right? It's, you know, we're going to the big boss for a raise. After they put on the show, they have all these grandiose ideas and they think they demand more money. However, this was refuted by Art Babbitt, one of the animators and the organizer behind the strike, and he's denied that scene is a reflection of that. Quote, people attach political significance to what happened there, you know, let's go on strike and so on. We weren't thinking strike at the time. In fact, there never would have been a strike if it hadn't been forced on us. And I was just doing a little bit of reading. It's all the workers, well, the majority of the workers unionized employees of Walt Disney Productions, they picketed, which disrupted the film for 4 months. The strike reflected anger at inequities of pay and privileges at Disney, a non-unionized workplace. Walt Disney responded to the 5-week strike by firing many of his animators, but was eventually pressured into recognizing the Screen Cartoonist Guild, the SCG, by signing a contract with them, which involved, amongst other concessions, rehiring those who wished to return. So, yeah, sounds like Walt might have been a little bit... you know, gung-ho in firing everyone, but and there's more to it as well. As I say, I wish I'd have read more about it, because it does talk about Pinocchio and Fantasia and whatnot, but yeah, I'll give that a read and we can recap that next week.
When you get to, because you got to think Dumbo, circus, right? Circus was, I mean, it's still a thing. There's still a circus. You can still run off with a circus if you want. Do you know what I mean? It's still a thing. But when you got to think, I compare it to Wreck-It Ralph, because Wreck-It Ralph took issues, not issues, but took things from the modern world of, games consoles, that kind of stuff. And I feel like Dumbo with the circus, it was very, what else do you have? You don't have games consoles. They're not around at the moment. Do you know what I mean? They're not a thing. You had the circus, you had this, you had that. And I feel like Dumbo, to be fair, I always thought was very, not realistic, because that would be completely weird to say it was realistic, but took something from, a time that was, well, what did they have? They had the circus. When Wreck-It Ralph came out, we had, obviously, video games. Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet, we're not going to talk about until we get to there, because that's a very different matter. But, it's things that were very relevant at the time, and I feel like the circus was your main kind of, this is cool, the circus has come to town. Whereas, I'll ask you this question. If the circus came to Tamworth, right, would you be excited?
Well, probably not now, no.
Exactly. If it was the 1950s, would you? Probably.
Oh, yeah.
You'd be like, something exciting going on. Exactly. It's the same sort of thing. Like when Wreck-It Ralph came out, it was the kind of, you've got a gaming. Yeah, cool. Of course I'm going to play Sonic. Of course I'll do this. Of course I'll do this. Fantastic. Wreck-It Ralph 2 comes out. Again, we'll go into that in another day, but... it's a kind of internet game, and it's multiplayer. Yeah, that's exciting. Now, personally, I have a circus that's about a 15-minute drive at most every single summer. Have I ever been? No. Point is, it's relevant, and I think Dumbo was relevant in that sense. Obviously, with elephants with flying ears, maybe not. That hasn't happened yet. One day when it does happen, I'll make this movie relevant. But it's a relevant topic in sense of circus. It's this whole, remember when there was that whole sort of, a gypsy read your future, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Relevant in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I have been to a circus before in the past. I've been to Blackpool Circus a few times at the Tower. I wouldn't go to one that has any kind of animals in them, which thankfully Blackpool Circus didn't. And that's one thing that I kind of appreciate about this film in a way. Like it does show that these circuses can be brutal, and it does kind of shine a mirror on the whole like animal cruelty thing. That being said, I don't feel like there's any major recompense in the film for the people that were running this thing. And yeah, like the circus master gets like dunked in like a barrel of water or something, I think, doesn't he, at the end of the film? I forget. And it looks like but there's still what, sorry?
Have you ever seen Would You Rather?
No, I don't think so.
I can't remember her name, but there's a porn star that gets dunked in water. So all I'm saying is there's a connection.
Wait a minute.
Her name.
Wait a minute. Was that the one with Sacha Grey in?
That's it. Sacha
I
Grey,
have seen that. No, I have seen that movie, and I've seen other movies that she starred in as well. She's a very good actress.
Yeah, we all have. She's
a very good actress.
She is a very good actress. After 10 o'clock, she's a great actress.
That's some nice, wholesome conversation when we're talking about Disney's Dumbo, one of my favourite childhood films. Sacha Grey was not in the live-action remake of Dumbo. However, Eva Green was, and that's just as good as far as I'm concerned.
To be fair, I've not seen it.
It's terrible, and it's awful in every single way, shape, and form.
Though? Have you seen the whole thing?
Yeah, I went to the cinema to see that piece of shit.
Not.
Because it was a Tim Burton film, and actually I do want to do a Tim Burton retrospective at some point, which means I'd probably have to watch that fucking film again. But yeah, what was I saying? Yes, at the end of the film, like, they're all still part of the circus, and I was kind of hoping like they'd break out free or something at the end. Yeah, that's the happy ending.
That's what the was meant to be.
And Dumbo's reunited with his mom, and you do get like a little bit of a reunion at the end, and it looks like she's like riding in first class or something, but they're still all part of the circus and they're still being exploited. And I don't know, it's a bit of the film just kind of ends, as I say, like after the whole pink elephant sequence, is just like you get your crow sequence and then boom, that's the end of the film. It's very strange. Favorite songs, because we kind of talked about songs briefly. There's actually some in this that one song in particular that I completely forgot that I really like. But what about you? What's your favorite one in this, would you say?
My thing is when the crows say, I've seen this fly, I've never seen an
horse
fly.
I've seen a dragon fly.
That because the thing is, I think it shines upon so many things, like the whole I think it goes with the whole when you see Superman, that kind of stuff, and you go, hang on, that's not the bird, that's a plane. It's the same sort of stuff, which I think is so iconic with the whole, I ain't seen a dragonfly, I've seen an elephant, like that sort of stuff. And it's the same with, like I say, with the whole Superman, that kind of stuff. I think it goes the same. So it's the most iconic thing for me.
It's the cleverest song for me as well, especially the lyrics. Ned Washington, who did the lyrics. I love all these the play on words and play on phrases, I've seen a peanut stand, I've seen a rubber band, and it's all these fun little play on words and phrases.
That is
yeah. That is the smoothest song for me. When I think of Dumbo, I immediately think of that one. That is the most iconic song. Pink Elephants is terrifying and weird and psychedelic, and you question why this is even in the film. I thought I heard somewhere it was from some unused stuff from Fantasia, but I did some digging and I didn't really find any more information on that, so I don't know if that's true or not.
Dumbo's ears were insured for $1 million.
Someone else insured something, right?
Yeah, David Lee Roth from Van Halen, as you know, this is going to be a thing, insured his penis for something. I can't remember how much, but there's a relevance. Van Halen, David Lee Roth, Dumbo. So David Lee Roth and Dumbo, they are a thing. I feel like they should do a duet. There should be an album, shouldn't there?
We have, so for anyone who isn't aware of this, you've started this whether you were aware of it or not, but there will be some kind of Van Halen reference to every Disney film, no matter how tenuous. We will think of one. Yeah, which is great. Going back to the music real quick, there's a couple of others that I really like in this. I mean, Baby Mine is iconic. That is a heart-wrenching scene. It really is. Doesn't quite come as close to Littlefoot's mom many years later when you get to Land Before Time, because that is the most emotionally impactful scene I think I've ever seen in a film ever. But Baby Mine's just a really nice scene, and I know a lot of people that get a bit teary-eyed during that scene, especially.
Does it remind you of Charlotte's Web? Kind of like it does for me. It has a vibe. I could be wrong, but for me, I feel like a Charlotte's Web kind of vibe in the whole movie.
Yeah, a little bit. I can see that. Oh, hey, we've just had a comment. Haven't seen you comment before. So, the Bored Jord, welcome to the channel. Says, hey guys, I watched the other videos and learned a lot of interesting things about these movies. I appreciate the passion for the classics. Always loved the Pink Elephant segment. Well, thank you for watching the previous videos, and hopefully hit the subscribe button. Shameless plug for the channel. We're not going anywhere. We're Dude, you're locked in, I'm afraid, for like every single Monday for the rest of time.
64, is it? Is it 64?
Yeah, something like that. We're going to be here for over a year doing this.
Good year.
But we're loving it. We're loving talking about these things. I mean, I'm finding stuff out behind the scenes on these films that I didn't know, so it's interesting for me. So we're going to continue sprinkling those behind the scenes features in as well, because I think that's really interesting to talk about. Yeah, other songs that I really like. Casey Jr. is an absolute foot tapper of a song. Casey Jr.'s coming down the track. Yeah, the train song, right? Apparently the voice of the train was done with some kind of like new and upcoming technology at the time. It was synthesized using something called a Sonovox system. I don't know, but I was never aware that the train spoke when I was young for some reason. Like when it's going up the hill, I thought it was just making like a train noise, but then watching it again, it's like, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I think I thought I could. Yeah. It's talking train. It's great. Now the Tim Burton version, I didn't want to kind of keep comparing shit to the live action versions because I tried to choose to forget them. Casey Jr. is terrifying because it has like the big, Batman Returns, Shrek Enterprises or Shrek Industries, whatever it is, has that giant rotating cat head with like the big Cheshire cat grin. So the front grill on the front of the train in Dumbo has that same kind of grin. So they kind of give him a face at the front, but obviously it's a static train, but it's like a gothic Tim Burton train. They do. Danny Elfman does the score to that film, and he did manage to slip in a little bit of the Casey Jr.'s coming down the track theme. And it was the only moment in the film where I felt anything. And it was that one moment in the score when that played.
Do you know what? I'll always remember, though. Every time you mention Batman Returns, I'll always remember the time you went and watched Batman 89, and then there was Batman Returns, and you went, I'm tired, I've got to go home.
We could have done a double feature of the two best Batman films.
I know, we didn't. I was up for it. You said no. So.
But I made up for it because many years later, we went and saw Batman Returns at the cinema still. So we still did watch it. We just didn't watch it on that double feature when we
It took us, what, 5 years?
Yeah, but better late than never.
5 years later, we did it. Which was technically, actually, I think we actually worked it out. It came out, was it 5 years afterwards? 94?
Yeah, it was really something... close, wasn't it, to the day? Yeah, it was strange timing.
So it actually worked out well.
I'm literally just listing off all the songs in this film, but one that I really liked, and I totally forgot about this whole scene until I watched it again, and then like all these childhood memories came back, and then I suddenly remembered all the lyrics to it. The workers song where they're putting up the tents, where they're getting the circus ready, and it's like raining and it's stormy. We're happy-hearted roustabouts, heave ho, heave, or whatever they're doing when they're, they've got the elephants and they're putting the big top up. Love that song. Great sort of like, it's kind of I won't say a scary scene, but it's quite an intense scene with like the weather, and you've got the elephants in the rain trying to like heave up these like big posts, and the animals are kind of being exploited to help move all this stuff. This is another song that apparently is racist too, because all of the workers are black people and they're kind of faceless and in the background and you can't see them. They sing that they get their pay whenever, or they might not even get paid, but they love doing what they do because they like seeing the happy faces of the kids saying that they're going to the circus. That's basically what the song is. It's like, we're happy to work. We work in any conditions, rain, snow, whatever. We've got to get the circus up. Boss man's hollering at us to get it done, but it's worth it because you get to see the faces of all the people coming to the circus and happy that we gave them that. But it's a great song. I really love that one. So, oh God, if I'm going to pick a favourite, shit. I do find myself just walking around the house sometimes, just humming Casey Jr. That's one that's just embedded itself in my head, so I might give that an honourable mention. The main one is When I See an Elephant Fly. That would be my number one. But like, if I'm going for something different, I'd probably go with either Casey Jr. or Song of the Roustabouts.
when I see an elephant fly, it's definitely my number one. But Pink Elephants on Parade it's just one of those tunes you know.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's one of those, like, because when the cymbals hit that and it just makes a load of, I can't remember what it was. It makes a load of little elephants and I just,
yeah.
exactly. And it's just one of those weird, because I think the great thing about it is you make a whole short movie out of the whole segment. It's a new thing. It's kind of like, you know, when you watch Friends, you know, when there's a whole, I mean, you've watched Friends, everyone's watched Friends. There's an episode with Jill Goodacre and they do the whole, like, they're stuck in an ATM vestibule thing. That's an episode, but there's a whole brilliant, you know, whole segment going on within the whole episode. It's the same with Pink Elephants on Parade. There's a whole segment going on, which is what, 3 minutes?
Yeah,
but you look and you go,
a full number.
That's quality. The whole thing is a quality movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to watch the hell out of that scene. As I said, like, I used to rewind over and over again that song, and it didn't scare me. Like, there are, you know, watching it again, it's like, I am not the time to hurt. It's like there's some really crazy vocals going on in it, and it's weird imagery, and it's so out of place in this, but it's so memorable. It's so memorable. And actually, when I heard that Tim Burton was doing the live action version, I thought, okay, it's probably going to suck because all the live action versions do. But if there's one scene in the film that I want to see Tim Burton do and see what he does with it, is the Pink Elephant sequence. And it's shit. It's over in, like, they don't even do the full song. It's over in about 10 seconds. And it's not even like this psychedelic trip. It's during the actual show, and they have like a bubble machine, and some of the bubbles merge into like a big pink elephant above the stage, and it's over in like 10 seconds, and that's it. You don't even get like a full musical number. It's terrible. Other things that were cut out of the Tim Burton version: no Timothy Mouse. You see 2 white mice in a cage, and I think one's wearing like a little bit of a circus hat, like the red hat that Timothy is. That's it, but they don't talk, and that he's not a main character. And of course, because 2019 Disney, there's no crows in the film at all in any way. So just like all the fun's just ripped out.
If I was a crow, I'd be offended.
Exactly. It doesn't seem very inclusive to me. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to talk about this film. In terms of the animation, just real quick, a lot of it to keep the costs down. A lot of the backgrounds were done in watercolor, which apparently is a thing that Lilo and Stitch is harkening back to Dumbo and some of the animation practices of that, where it does a lot of its backgrounds on the cheap with watercolor. But that being said, like, I don't look at this film and think like the animation looks shit. Like, it doesn't look as detailed. There aren't as many special effects going on as there are in like Fantasia, like the Bald Mountain sequence in Fantasia, for example, or some of the shots in Snow White, or even Pinocchio. There's not sort of like any grandiose set pieces like this, but I still think the animation's solid. I still like the character work. It might not be as detailed, you know, but the movement's still great. It doesn't look like it's done on the cheap, and it's still a very enjoyable Disney classic, in my opinion.
I think it's Walt Disney's favourite because it is not the epitome of Disney, because I said that for Fantasia, and that is, to me, the epitome of Disney. But I think it's that kids' movie that this is what it is. There's no depth, there's no this, there's just, this is a kids' movie, and I feel like that's what Dumbo gives, and that's why I think it doesn't have the whole, like you say, the animation that Pinocchio had, because Pinocchio is obviously so much more detailed. But it doesn't need that. It's just your kids' movie. It's great. That's what... Because when you see Disney, let's just say you see something, you see Disney whacked on top of it. Do you think kids' movie? You do a little bit, don't you? Whether it's even the littlest bit, you think, oh, Disney's for kids. That's what you see, and that's what Dumbo is.
Yeah. I found that direct quote, by the way. So during the Bambi story meeting in 1940, so again, that must have been worked on during this time, Disney observed that Dumbo was, quote, an obvious straight cartoon. And yeah, it absolutely is. I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. And because of that, he didn't want to assign the same animators that were working on Bambi to do the look of this film, because you mentioned it as well. I mean, this almost turned into a Bambi review, because I reminded you yesterday, it's like, are we good for Dumbo tomorrow? And you were like, Dumbo? I thought we were on Bambi. Like, oh shit, I better get Dumbo watched. But you watch Bambi and it feels a lot more. Yeah, it does have its cutesy scenes as well, but it's a lot more stoic and it feels much more realistic in terms of the animals.
Thing is, you've got them side by side and they're very different.
Yeah,
very different. Like obviously we'll comment that next week when we talk about that, but very different. And I think that's a great thing about it is as well. And I think that's one thing some movies miss is you have one movie and then you have another one. But I think having the contrast, which I don't think Disney did that on purpose, but having that contrast between one movie being this kind of genre, then the other one being completely different, actually has a great effect, especially when you're looking back at it. When did Bambi come out? 1950? No.
It wasn't that much of a jump. Let me have a look.
50 was Alice in Wonderland, wasn't
it? A year later, 1942.
There you go. So when you're looking at it almost 80 years ago, like, it's 80 years ago. When you look at it like that, it's very kind of like, this is a really cool comparison, whereas they didn't mean for it then. I think a lot of movies miss that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I appreciate that Disney brought on less experienced animators on this thing. He was like, I don't need top quality animation on this thing. Like it was like, get it done fast and get it done cheap was basically thing behind this. And you do see that with some films now, especially by Disney. It's like, oh yeah, just fire it out, yeah, whatever. But that being said, like it didn't strike me as like a kind of hand wavy film for Disney, like, oh yeah, do whatever you want with it. Like he was still passionate about it. He still had that idea and spark of what could be done with it. Like for example, originally it was said, oh, we'll just turn it into an animated short. And he was like, no. If we're going to give this the proper treatment that the story deserves, we've got to do this as a feature. A short feature, granted, like I think it barely qualifies as a feature, but it's still, I think it's the perfect length, to be honest. I think any longer and it would have diminished the film. I think Disney was absolutely right. 64 minutes, in, out. The story's not complex. It's kind of, as I said, like the storytelling gets a little bit wishy-washy towards the end. It's almost it kind of almost does turn into like a few series of animated shorts. Like you've got your main plot with the circus and the mom getting locked up and Dumbo being sort of like forced into the whole clown thing and having to prove himself. And then at the end, you've just got like a couple of random sequences of pink elephants, the crows, and then all of a sudden it ends.
It's kind of like, you know, when you see Pinocchio, you see Snow White, where they're very... Snow White, to me, remember I compared it to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is great. You know, you've got the segments of your everyday life. This is what happens, then this is what happens. You know, you've got Pinocchio where you've got basically three segments. You've got, obviously, with Monstro, you've got with Honest John, you've got this, you've got that. I think, you know, I think a lot of old Disney movies have that, where they've got kind of... I'm trying to think of it...
I think that works for Pinocchio, though, because the book that it's based on is incredibly episodic. It's almost like a series of short little events that are the kind of their own entity, really.
To be fair, I think there's a lot of older movies that do it where... I mean, anime is a good example where Digimon the movie, I don't know if you ever went to see that, but I went to cinema.
I went to see it.
Yeah. Cinema, see Digimon the movie, there was 3 segments where they were all different actual films in Japan. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of older movies have that, whereas this bit, then this bit, then this bit, where they could be 3 separate movies or 4 separate, whatever it be. Whereas now, you've literally got, this is the movie, this is it. It's more serious. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like movies today are more serious of this is to the point, whereas back then this could be a short, this could be 4 shorts, this could be 3 shorts. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the question, because I guess we're kind of like rounding off now, let's do favourite scene from the film. So we've done favourite song. I picked When I See an Elephant Fly. Is that your one as well? Is that your favourite song?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, let's do favourite scene and favourite character.
It's weird. I hate having my favourite character as the main character, but Dumbo, I love Dumbo because
he's very
cute.
Fly. It's very cute.
Yeah, and he's cute. That's the thing. It's the cutesy thing, and it's the fact that you remember at the end as well when he wears the the clown makeup and all that kind of stuff. I just love Dumbo. I think because it was 1980 something, Dumbo spoke for the first time, and I just think he's great.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, do you not know about that?
No.
Yeah, so Dumbo doesn't speak obviously in the original movie, right?
Uh-huh.
it was 1980 something. Dumbo spoke for the first time, and I thought Dumbo's just cool.
Oh, that's weird. When did he speak? What was that in?
I can't remember what it was in exactly, but it's kind of like having a dog. Dog doesn't speak. Dog just goes woof. Obviously, as dogs do. But then 10 years later, for some random reason, your dog goes, "Hey, you're right," and you're like, "Whoa." You're like, "This is kind of cool, but a bit weird."
Yeah.
It's kind of vibe, which I think is great about Dumbo. So Dumbo is my favorite. How cliche as that sounds, I think Dumbo is my favorite character, and I think my favorite scene in sense of, let's say, shot is your ending where he is on the fire house, because for many reasons. One, Kiss has a song called Firehouse, which is great. Two, yeah, exactly. Two, there's a band called Firehouse, and
There is.
three, yeah, exactly, and three, because there's a level in Kingdom Hearts where there's a house on fire and you have to fight these load of cars in black and white. But I just think it's a wicked scene. I think it goes.
Kingdom Hearts
It's a
2?
yeah, Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh, the Steamboat
in
Willie
the
scene, yeah.
in the Timeless River
Yeah.
world, I think it's great. And I think the great thing about that is as well is it's so not different, but I think Dumbo, like, for me, achieves so many aspects of he's cute. He's a great character. He can fly with his ears. He, insures his ears for $1 million, like David Lee Roth insures his penis. I think it covers so many things. I think Dumbo, for me, is your kid-friendly. If I had a child, I don't, but if I had a child, I would go, here's Dumbo, look at this is great. Whereas Pinocchio is more of a bit more, there's this. Oh, look, he's smoking cigars. Bit more thought out, whereas Dumbo is your movie. You're like, oh, this is kind of cool. He's got ears, he flaps. And then when your kid's 3, can we watch Dumbo, Daddy? Like, I feel like that's the movie.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm trying to think of my favourite scene. Oh, God. I can't keep saying when I see an elephant fly, but I just love those characters. I just love that moment.
What about with the boss, when they walk in the shadows? I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool shot. Yeah, an interesting way. It's almost like, I won't say that they're ashamed to animate humans, because they do throughout the rest of the film, of course. You got the ringmaster and that person who kind of jeers and makes fun of Dumbo. I really like the Mr. Stork stuff at the beginning. Mrs. Jumbo! And he's like looking for her. I actually forgot that the mom spoke. I thought she was like Dumbo. I thought she didn't speak at all, but I think she literally only says Jumbo Jr. when she names the kid at the beginning, when she names Dumbo. I think that's it. I do like the scene as well where the mom like fights back against that guy and everything gets like a little bit intense. But no, I'm gonna go my favorite scene in the film. It would be when I see an elephant fly. If I was gonna go another one, it would be the happy-hearted roustabout scene, because I just love the intensity behind that with the rain and putting the circus up, and it just sticks out in my mind. Pink Elephants is obviously great. I guess the bored Jord would go straight for Pink Elephants because, mentioned that you love that sequence. Favorite character? I actually, as a kid, I always really liked Timothy Mouse. I really liked Timothy Mouse. I thought he was when you've got a mute character, I feel like you kind of need a character alongside them to, actually. I guess that's why Robin was created, like Batman and Robin, because like Batman's very like stoic and doesn't really talk much on his own. But if you got Robin in the mix, then he has someone to play off. There's a bit more conversation to be had there, I suppose, between two characters. I got to give it to Dandy Crow though. Like he's just, I love the swagger. He's got Cliff Edwards as well. I think was like a jazz musician. I know he played the ukulele as well. Popular
I'm thinking of Cliff Williams.
I'm
thinking of Cliff Williams, a dude from Metallica. I went yes, and I was like, wrong guy.
Oh, do you mean Cliff Burton?
That's it. Cliff Williams is AC/DC. That's it. There's so many Cliffs. Cliff of the Big Red Dog.
It's Cliff Richard.
Yeah, there you go. There's too many.
It's reminding me of Home Alone now. You've been smooching with everyone. Cheeks, Bonnie Bab, Cliff. I could go on forever, baby.
I'm going to tell my dad to change his name. I'm like, that's not allowed.
Yeah.
There's too many.
In short, I really like Dumbo. It's one that I hadn't gone to for years, but man, I was hit with so much goddamn nostalgia watching that film again. And I had a great time. It's always fun to know how it keeps flooding back. Next week we will be back at the same time again, 8 p.m. GMT for Bambi. You've watched this one now, Dale. You don't need to watch this one again. You've already seen it. I watched this again recently. I am probably going to rewatch this again before next week. For some reason, it's always a film where I distinctly remember the first half of it, and then I always forget the second half when he becomes an adult. So I need to go over that again and probably watch that.
I feel like everyone does though, because Bambi is Bambi. When he becomes an adult, it's like, ooh. Because, right, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. Correct me if anyone, comment, whatever. Everyone thinks Bambi's a girl. Or was that just me?
No, I thought Flower was a girl, and then when suddenly you get a dude's voice come out of Flower at the end, I was like, what the fuck? When did this happen?
I think Bambi's great. I think because it's more unexpected than you think.
Yeah.
Bambi reminds me of Land Before Time, but that's because somebody gets killed. But we'll go on to that.
Yeah, we will. That's gonna be a talking point for next week. So yeah, Bambi's the next one. So thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight and commented along. If you're just discovering this now, comment and let us know your favourite moments from Dumbo, favourite characters, favourite songs, anything related to Disney. We're going to be here for many, many more weeks. And yeah, we're loving it. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night, and we'll catch you next week.
I think the great thing about Dumbo is trampolines, or like bouncing on trampolines, circuses. I think Dumbo makes a big